Hello and welcome to A Fountain of Useless Information, a micro podcast hosted by Ann O'Connor. Each 15-minute episode will feature a person, much like yourself, who knows something unusual, interesting, and maybe even zany that is near and dear to their heart. We are here today with Steve Brown, the two-time All-Ireland Bones Playing Championship winner in West Limerick, who also makes these enchanting percussion instruments. Steve, can you tell us a little bit about the bones?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. Hope you have lots of time on hand. The bones, interestingly enough, are literally thousands of years old, and they're in lots of different cultures throughout the world. The Egyptians played the bones, especially when they were performing religious rituals. Some of the oldest relics that we have are from China, actually, where it was somewhere around 2400 BC, some of the bones that they found. So it's really interesting, and they really had spread around the world. And Shakespeare wrote about them. Yeah, the bones have been around for literally hundreds and maybe thousands of years. They were brought to the United States. They ended up as being an integral part of the minstrel show, that highly racist form of music that was very popular in the United States back in the mid-19th century. Bones were so popular that they were sold through the Sears catalog. The bones slowly started getting integrated into lots of different kinds of music, and not only the blues, there's also in jazz. I was lucky enough to have a telephone relationship with Mr. Goonbones, and he had all these little clubs of bones players throughout the United States called Goonbones clubs. Now in Boston, we had a gentleman by the name of John Burrell, but everybody called him Mr. Bones of Boston. Bonnie Raitt was a pretty good friend of his, and if she was in town, she would invite him up to play with her.
They're an instrument that I've usually associated with Celtic music, and I know that's what you play a lot of.
Yep,
but how did you even start with bones? Why bones?
A lot of people think back of the 60s, and all they remember is, rock and roll of the 60s, which is great stuff. My point is that the 60s were actually very diverse. They were actually included lots of different kinds of music.
Yeah, the folk music scene was huge at that time.
Exactly, yeah. You became more open to kinds of things, and, there was kind of a little bit of a swing towards country music in the early 70s, and I started going to fiddle contests, and we went to the Craftsbury Fiddlers Contest, and it was the first time that I had really, been to that kind of venue, although my father played violin, he played fiddle a bit, he played harmonica a bit, and he would play. I had heard some of the tunes, That really started opening up my mind and started listening to more things. And I was in Cambridge when your tax check comes back. You get to do things with it that you probably wouldn't normally do. So we ended up in Cambridge at a record sale. And I can remember standing in the record shop and seeing this record, and it had all these weird instruments that I'd never seen before. And in the center of it was a pair of bones. I bought the record. I never heard it before. It turned out to be Chieftains No. 5. So I put the thing on. The first time I listened to it, I was like, Second time I listened to it was, And third time, well, there was a third, fourth, fifth, and many, many other ones. In that particular record, there was a bones player, and his name was Ronnie McShane. And then I started getting, really interested in this instrument. Having been a percussionist, having been a drummer, pretty much my whole life, I think that's one of the major things that started attracting me. But I was over my brother's house and said, I'm really interested in this thing called the bones. And he said, oh, I know a bones player. And I thought, right, sure. You're putting me on. That's probably not real. Well, he did. He knew Percy Danforth. And Percy Danforth is generally considered to be the most notable bones player in the United States back in the 70s, 80s. He passed away in the early 90s. And so I wrote Percy a letter. I just said, what can you tell me about the bones? Kind of what you said to me. And he wrote back to me, and he sent to me 2 pairs of bones. He sent me a picture of himself and all kinds of instructional material. So I was thrilled, but I had never seen anybody play before. And I started trying to play myself, with moderate success, And it wasn't until about a month or 2 after I got the bones that I got a phone call, and hi, it's Percy Danforth. I'm in Boston. I'm like, oh, where are you? So I drove down, spent the evening with he and his wife Fran, and I became a devotee of Percy Danforth, and Percy would, I only met him 3 or 4 times in my life because he lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and I lived out here, and unfortunately I wasn't able to travel much, but I did get him to the New England Folk Festival one weekend. I ferried him back and forth between the airport and the festival and spent most of the time with him, so I'm lucky in that regard, But that's the bones, suckered me in, and man, I just, started playing. And then I began to realize the connection between Irish music and the bones, and of course, playing other kinds of music too, not so much bluegrass, a little bit here and there, but certainly French Canadian music and so forth. So if you flash forward a number of years, I'm in Ireland. I'm about to compete for the All-Ireland Bone Playing Championship, and I'm sitting in my bed and breakfast, having breakfast after a long night of playing music, and my landlady came up to me and said, oh, there's another bones player here. Would you like to meet him, And I'm like, sure. And she called him over, and she said, this is Ronnie McShane. So Ronnie McShane, the bones player with the Chieftains, 40-something years previously, who had been a mentor to me, even though I had never met him. And I started talking to him, and we became fast friends. And they actually moved us out of the bed and breakfast area into the living room because we were taking so much time and up space and so forth. But I've been very, very fortunate. Played Irish music for many years and bunches of different bands. I actually taught at the Boston Irish Music School, Cultus Cultoriaran, and I got to perform with the Chieftains at Symphony Hall.
And it's not just playing that you do.
I make the bones, and I make them out of bone and wood, but bone is really my forte, as it were.
So how do you make them?
I use the various leg bones of the cow. Probably the original bones were rib bones. What I do is first you take the leg bone, and then I start to cut them, trim them down to use the part that I want to use. Then I start to grind them down. So what you want to do is you want to accentuate that natural curve, and then you want to bring it down in terms of thickness. I'll start to sand them down, and then I polish them with jeweler's abrasive. It's a labor-intensive. There are very few people that do it, and I think that's one of the reasons, I don't make my living doing it. So then what you do is you put one in between your forefinger and your middle finger. You take your middle finger and you push it down hard into this meaty part of your thumb, and the other one you want to allow to move. So let's see what it sounds like. So yeah, bone playing is pretty much a combination of those 2 elements, the tap and the rattle. And then, of course, you put another pair in the other hand, and you can do all kinds of craziness. But pair of wooden bones that I made.
And are you using real hardwood like that? Is that rosewood?
This is oak.
Oak.
Play some tunes, and we can play them together then.
All right. In the days when I went courting, I was never tired resorting to the alehouse and the playhouse, or another house besides. I told my brother Seamus I'd go off and grow right famous, and before that I'd return again. I'd roam the whole world wide. So it's goodbye, Mrs. Durkin. Sure, I'm sick and tired of working. No more I'll dig potatoes, no longer I'll be poor. As sure as my name is Barney, well, I'm off to California. And instead of digging potatoes, I'll be digging lumps of gold. Thank you, Steve.
Very cool. You're very welcome. Thank you. When the minstrel show kind of died out and went underground in various communities, they were put on by people that didn't have any experience. So one of the things that they didn't have people that knew how to play the bones. They had people who knew how to play the fiddle. They had people that knew how to play the banjo. But the bones were something new and different to a lot of these people. And somebody along the line, remember those cheater spoons that are connected?
I have several pair.
There you go. So somebody came up with this little contraption, which is really cheater bones.
Oh, I think we had those in elementary school.
Oh, no kidding. Well, this one is interesting. It was a advertisement, as you can see.
Rattling good clothes for boys.
Right.
Hartford, Connecticut, one of my favorite places.
So that's one interesting thing. Here's another interesting thing. Is that back in the 40s, there was a gentleman who produced a plastic. They were actually Bakelite type of bones. And you can see that he has a little box here. And then he has a little, have more fun at parties, barn dances, jam sessions, beach parties, dances. Anyone can play. So it's kind of interesting. So when the Rhythm Bone Society got into being, and a lot of bones players started coming out of the woodwork. One of the guys that we got to know was Joe Burrell, who actually made these. And Joe's passed away now, but he used to come. But these are made out of plastic.
They're just fine. They're loud.
Oh, yeah. Yep. There are two problems with them. One of them is that the edges tend to be very sharp. And so a lot of people will take tape or something and put them on the edge. The other thing is that they have a tendency when you're playing them to break off and a piece of them fly out into the audience, you know. These are metal bones. And they have a nice sound to them. So, yeah, I guess that's about it, you know. Just one quick thing about the Rhythm Bone Society, which is a nonprofit organization dedicated to the continuation of the art of playing the rhythm bones. We have a party once a year we call Bones Fest, and we move it around the country.
And where can people find that information? Does that have a website?
Yes, it does. It's rhythmbones.com. So we're a nonprofit organization, and there's tons of information about the bones there.
Steve, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much, Ann, for asking me. I so appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A Fountain of Useless Information is hosted, produced, and edited by Ann O'Connor. Do you have an idea for the podcast? You can reach Ann through her website, annoc.com, ANNEOC.com, on Facebook at Our History AOC, or by calling or texting 978-958-0054. All music on the podcast is in the public domain or is written and performed by the host and guests of the podcast. A Fountain of Useless Information was recorded at the Fitchburg Access Television Studios in Fitchburg. They are on the web at fatv.org.